What goes through a person's mind when they know exactly when their heart will stop beating? For most of us, the end is a mystery, a distant shadow we hope to avoid. But for those on death row, the end is a scheduled appointment. It is a world of cold concrete, whispered prayers, and the heavy silence of the final 24 hours. Today, we look into the eyes of three individuals whose names are etched into the darker chapters of American history. One claimed self-defense against a world that had abandoned her. Another sought redemption through the stroke of a pen. And the third held a secret motive that he took with him to the grave. Are these stories of justice served, or are they complex portraits of human tragedy?
Welcome to Living History Channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one.
Aileen Wuornos, the survivalist's shadow. Our journey begins with a face that many recognize from news headlines and Hollywood screens. In this photograph, you see Aileen Wuornos. Look closely at her expression. There is a haunting mixture of weariness and defiance. Convicted of murdering 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos's case was never a simple matter of black and white. Throughout her trial, she maintained a harrowing defense that every life she took was an act of self-defense against men who had brutalized her while she worked as a sex worker on the Florida highways. The historical context of her era often overlooked the systemic trauma of women in her position, yet the law remained unmoved. After 12 years on death row, her spirit seemed to have retreated into a quiet, almost detached state. On October 9th, 2002, at the Florida State Prison, she declined the traditional elaborate last meal, asking only for a simple cup of coffee. It was a final, humble gesture from a woman whose life had been anything but simple. Her execution by lethal injection closed a chapter that continues to spark debate about mental health and the cycle of violence. But while Aileen's story ended in a quiet room with a cup of coffee, our next subject sought to change the world from within his cell. Stanley Tookie Williams, the pen versus the past. Transitioning from the Florida sun to the high walls of San Quentin, we find the story of Stanley Tookie Williams. In the image before you, Williams appears physically imposing, yet his eyes reflect a man who spent decades trying to outrun his younger self. As a co-founder of the Crips gang, his early life was synonymous with the violence that gripped Los Angeles. However, while awaiting execution for the 1979 murders of 4 people, something shifted. Williams began writing children's books, speaking out against the very gang culture he helped create. This transformation led to multiple Nobel Peace Prize nominations and a global outcry for clemency. His final 24 hours were a tense standoff between the hope of redemption and the rigidity of the law. Like Wuornos, he rejected a final meal, opting only for milk, a choice that felt almost symbolic of a return to innocence. Despite the pleas of supporters who believed he was a changed man, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger denied clemency, arguing that his past actions outweighed his current words. On December 13, 2005, the execution became a gruesome ordeal as technicians struggled for minutes to find a vein. It was a chaotic end, for a man who had spent his final years pleading for peace, leaving behind a legacy that still asks, is true redemption possible behind bars? John Allen Muhammad, the Stoic mastermind. While William sought to speak to the world, our final subject chose total silence. In October 2002, a wave of fear paralyzed the Washington, D.C. area. The man behind that fear was John Allen Muhammad. In this archival photo, Muhammad's face is a mask of calm, a stoicism that his lawyer described as fearless. For 3 weeks, he and a teenage accomplice conducted a sniper campaign that claimed 10 lives, seemingly at random. Historical records suggest a motive involving extortion, but Muhammad never truly explained the why behind the carnage. His final hours on November 10, 2009, were marked by a chilling lack of emotion. Unlike the others, he did request a last meal, chicken with red sauce and cake, but he kept the details private, a final act of control. As he was escorted to the death chamber at Greensville Correctional Center, witnesses described him as unemotional, staring at the ceiling and refusing to offer any last words. For the families of the victims watching through the glass, the peacefulness of his passing felt like an injustice in itself, leaving them with a sense of relief but no real answers. 3 lives, 3 different paths, yet they all ended on a gurney under the flicker of institutional lights. When we look back at these cases, Aileen Wuornos and her claim of self-defense, Tookie Williams and his quest for peace, and John Allen Muhammad with his cold, silent defiance, we are forced to confront the heaviest questions of our society. Is the death penalty a necessary finality, or does it merely add another layer to a cycle of tragedy? Perhaps these stories suggest that the American Wild West never truly vanished. It just moved inside the prison walls, where the struggle for survival, the hope for forgiveness, and the weight of one's actions meet their final, inevitable end. As we look at these restored images of the past, we don't just see criminals. We see the complicated, messy, and often heartbreaking reality of the human condition.
Thanks for watching. I'm always hunting for lost photos and untold stories. Got a time period in mind? Let me know in the comments.